G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Fred Joyal from the Fred Joyal Company based in Los Angeles, United States. Thanks for your time today, Fred.
Nice to be here, Troy.
Let's start with how we know each other. So Brittany from Accelerol got in touch and thought you'd be a great guest to have on. You're currently an executive coach, a best-selling author and a speaker, but you've also had a big business. You grew over 30 years.
Yeah, it was an advertising business focused on dentistry, actually focused on dentists were my clients, and we were a national referral service. That was our claim to fame and our random sort of career for my partner and me. We kind of fell into it because somebody had the phone number 800 dentist, which was a toll-free number, and it was back when toll-free numbers first came out. In the US, it's 7 digits. Dentists replaced the 7 digits perfectly, and a friend of mine just had the number. He saw the numbers coming out and he said, I'm going to grab a bunch of these numbers, and he never did anything with it. It rang to his house for like 6 years. And he saw me in the advertising business and he said, I think you could turn this into a business. And I said, well, I'm not going to work with you because you don't work. Right? He was an idea man who thought ideas are 98% of businesses. That was his viewpoint, right? As we know, it's like, no, ideas are like 2%.
Have you seen
98%?
Have you seen Night Shift with Michael Keaton and what's his name that played Fonzie?
Now you made me blank on it. I had him and I can picture him now.
I'm gonna have to go to it.
Oh yes, yeah. And I was just thinking about that movie because some reason, Mike. What's that?
Henry Winkler was Fonzie.
Henry Winkler, yes, of course.
It's a great movie, Night Shift, and there's a scene in there where Michael Keaton comes in, and I think Henry Winkler's working in a morgue, and for some reason Michael Keaton has to work there, and he comes in, he's all energetic, and and he's spitting out ideas. He's recording into his tape recorder so he doesn't forget all these ideas, like edible paper, I think is the one he spouts about at the time, and he says, I'm an ideas man. But yes, you're right.
Idea, man. Feed tuna mayonnaise. So you already have it. Yes, that was one of his ideas, right?
Well, it sounds like you avoided one of the early mistakes I certainly made in my business career, and many other people I've spoken with of picking the wrong business partner. So that well done on that, dodging that one. Yes.
No, and I had a great partner. We're still very close friends 30 years later, and really 35 years later at this point, and we made each other very successful. And I always tell people we have no idea who took more money out of the business because we didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Right. It was like, who needs more money this year?
Yeah.
I'm buying a house. All right. Well, you better take a couple hundred out.
Yeah.
It was like there was never a tallying up at the end of the year or anything, because money was tertiary. We wanted a great place to work. We wanted a product where everybody won, and we wanted to make money. And money never moved its way up to above the employees and above the customers and above each other. And meanwhile, I've had good friends. I've actually sat on the board of a company with 2 good friends who went to war with each other, and they had made each other really successful, really wealthy. And it got so ugly that they actually fired the CEO, who was the majority shareholder.
Wow.
They eventually healed the relationship, but it was so bad I quit the board because I said, I can't get between you guys because I love you both, and I don't know how to fix this, but I don't want to be adjudicating this.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not much fun sitting on boards or being involved in businesses when that's going on. tell our audience a bit about your business, what you're doing now. So a best-selling author, so maybe tell us a bit about the book and the coaching and the speaking.
Yeah, so I'll talk about the coaching first, because in 30 years, you make tons of mistakes.
Yep.
And you learn a lot of stuff the hard way. The tuition's very, very expensive. And so what I do now is I coach CEOs and their teams on how to make the same mistakes how not to make the same mistakes I did, and how to think about things like culture and pricing and marketing and all of these components, and how all of the things that have to work together. You know, when to raise money, what too much money can do to your business, all of these things. You know, how to recruit at the initial phases of your business. And so and some of these guys are in mid stage where we were as well. And I can say, you know, okay, now you're thinking about going public, or you're thinking about raising $30 million. How do you go about that? Because I dealt with enough private equity firms and venture funds and mezzanine finance guys along the way to help them hit different potholes along the way than I hit. So that's what I do on the coaching side. And on the personal side, really, I wrote a book last year on how to cultivate the superpower of boldness, which is this book here.
Yep. Super bold. Yep.
Super bold. And it's because I grew up as a very shy person and very underconfident, and I missed out on a lot of opportunities, whether it was relationships or fun or jobs or business opportunities, all of those things, that I just kept missing things and getting more and more frustrated with my hesitation. And I figured out I had to defeat it. I had to work my way through it. And I would watch bold people and say, why are they like this? You know, are they born this way or what? And then I just started to emulate them, and just while being uncomfortable. But I did it in a gradual way sadly over decades, but I got bolder and bolder. And I realized that's where all the great stuff is. And bold people know certain things. They know 90% of the time nothing bad happens.
Yep.
So they try everything. And they don't even worry about the outcome a lot of times, because they think, well, I'm going to discover something interesting and I'll find that when it shows up. And they act like they belong everywhere. So that's how people treat them. And it's very powerful. So I put a book together of all of these things I learned, and then created a systematic way for anybody to learn it. However underconfident they are, they could be confident most of the time, except when it matters most, like they're trying to close a deal or something like that, or meet a mate. And then I filled the book with a bunch of exercises that people could do to build their boldness muscle. So I'm spending about half my time promoting the book, lecturing on that, doing podcasts on that, and just putting together a workshop that by the time this is out, the first workshop will be launched, a 2-day intensive workshop. So
in person or online?
In person.
Yeah.
No, it's very interactive. I'm going to send them out in the world, and they're going to be doing some wild stuff in the room. And then, you know, in the evening, they got to go out and do karaoke and whatever makes them uncomfortable, they're going to be doing. And they're going to have a wing person with them, putting them through their paces as well, and recording it so that we can watch it the next morning in class. Yep.
Great. It sounds like it's much needed as well. I was also a bit timid and shy growing up, and a lot of people wouldn't believe that these days, but yeah, I know exactly the path that you followed. And maybe tell us how you started out.
So, you know, my partner and I, we looked at this idea of the business, and so we started out with this phone number, and so we beat the streets for like 6 months in Los Angeles to find 20 dentists that would go along with this idea, because advertising was very early. This was in 1986, and I had written some radio commercials, because that was my career. I was in the creative side of the ad world, So we both quit our jobs, and then after 6 months, we had 20 doctors paying us, and we ran some radio spots, and we got 50 phone calls the first day, and we went, holy crap, this is actually going to work. We had set up this little tiny phone room, and this was back when the computers didn't even have hard drives. I mean, the program was on one floppy disk, and the data was on another floppy disk. It was like, I mean, it was like 2K of storage or something. And then we just kept adding doctors and spending all of it on advertising just to grow. So we just kept tearing up in the advertising, because the numbers kept going up, and it allowed us to satisfy more and more doctors. And we learned various things along the way. When we got to about 100 doctors, we realized we needed a major pivot in the business, because we had essentially sold real estate. We had said, okay, everything in this zip code, this mailing code, was yours. Everything that came in that area was yours. And we'd have one guy would get 70 referrals in a month, and another guy would get 10. So we said, we have to take away your land,
yep.
and make it an average of 15 referrals a month for everybody. And that was what they could expect. And 98 of them went along with it, and 2 of them sued us. And and we eventually settled the lawsuit. And then in that was my first lesson, was that there's nothing more expensive than a cheap lawyer.
Yep.
Because the first thing we did was try to do what we could afford.
Yeah.
And then we were just getting our asses kicked in the depositions and everything. And so we switched to this other very expensive lawyer who was a neighbor of my partner's. And in 2 days, the whole thing reversed it. In a week, it was settled.
Wow.
It was amazing. And actually, at one point, the other attorney and I were standing next to each other in the restroom at the urinals. And he looked over and he said, "I miss your old lawyer." and I said, "Yeah, I'll bet you do." So,
love it.
Yeah.
So what happened about 30 years later? Did you end up selling the business, or?
Yeah, my partner wanted to get bought out. And he wanted to be, he had gone passive a few years earlier, didn't want to, he wanted to day trade in the market and stuff like that. And then I was still active in the business, and I had another company I wanted to buy. So we brought in private equity. And that wasn't the mistake so much as who we hired, because private equity wanted somebody else to run it. They wanted somebody else to be the CEO besides me. Which I was fine with, because the idea is when you bring in private equity, you're going to sell the business 5-6 years out. That's their strategy. They're going to grow the business. And this CEO was poison.
Right.
The company that we bought, which was a SaaS product, and it was very early when SaaS products were just coming along, and I saw this thing was beautiful. It was the transition we needed to move into. And they had a super coder, those guys that are 25 times better than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But they did something that offended the CEO, that made him think that they were diverging from the deal that they had made. And so he fired them all and got in litigation with them. We spent 6 months in litigation, lost completely and utterly, and lost the super coder and the other 2 guys that ran the business. My IT guys, they were like, the code's not annotated. Like, we have no idea how to maintain this code, never mind refine and improve it over the years. And we also, for 6 months, all my competitors said, "Oh shit, here comes Fred. He's got this whole foundation. He's got 5,000 dentists, already buying from him. He's going to roll right over us." So they upped their marketing, and we forfeited the match. We never showed up.
Yep.
And that business, had we been able to keep that instead of losing it, would have been worth $80 to $100 million.
Right.
And instead, and our business was in decline because Google was disintermediating us like crazy. A phone number was becoming more and more irrelevant.
Yeah.
And we knew it. We knew we had to get off that melting iceberg and get to dry land. And that's what the SaaS product was going to do, but it was too late. And then after a year after the CEO, after his disaster, he just walked. He left a cup of coffee on his desk and just walked away, took nothing out of his office and just said, I'm all done.
Sounds like a real asshole.
Well, and he also didn't believe in culture at all.
He's definitely an asshole.
And we had the whole foundation of we had the core values were painted on the lobby wall in big letters so that everybody who came there saw them and everybody who worked there saw them. His first month, he paints over them.
Are you serious?
And then and then a month or two later, a bunch of my VPs were talking. They said, wow, he wasn't kidding. He meant it. He wasn't just redesigning the place. He was erasing the core values.
Jeez.
And there was nothing I could do. This is how tragic it was. The three guys that own the SaaS product, they said, we would have settled with you. We wanted to work with you so badly. We would have settled. We would have taken $500,000 off the sale price just to stay and work with you guys.
But you were tied up with a non-compete, I assume.
The board would have fired me.
Yeah.
I didn't have the power to do it, but if I did do it, I would have still been better off because my company would have been worth something. By the end, my company the value had plummeted to the point where, and I made great money. I mean, we generated in 30 years that I was running it, we generated over $1 billion of revenue in aggregate. So we did okay, but the business wasn't worth anything at the end. And I could have had, I would have owned a third of the business at a $80 or $90 million sale. So I'd be, but then, maybe I wouldn't have written the Super Bowl book because I'd have been too busy, cruising around on my yacht or doing something, or going into outer space or something.
That's right. Joining Bezos and Musk.
Yeah. So in the end, it's all just money, and it's all just learning, and it's all just life.
Yep. That's great.
We had a great business for a long time, and we made great careers for a lot of people, and they made me wealthy.
Yep.
We never forgot who was making us wealthy, and they knew it.
It's exactly what the audience wants to hear, Fred, is not just all the wins and wealth and success, but obviously the shitstorm that you've gone through to get to where you are now and the mistakes you've made, so they can, exactly what you're doing with your coaching, help them avoid making similar mistakes. So thank you for that. Any other key numbers on growth of that business? You started out with 2, yourself and your business partner. What kind of near the end there, how many full-time equivalent team members would there have been?
250.
Holy shit. Right. That's pretty good growth.
Yeah. And there was a couple of things that we did that we thought was really emblematic of the type of business it was, is we really we grew from within. We let people know that there was opportunity within the place whenever we put out a job. Opportunity, because we had a 100-seat call center, so everybody in the call center knew that there was opportunity to come work in sales or customer service or the marketing department if they qualified. And we loved that because they knew how the sausage was made. They were in there taking hundreds and hundreds of phone calls before they would come into this department. And if they're in customer service and somebody's trying to tell them, oh, well, this happened and this happened, they could say with authority, no, that's not what we do.
Yep.
But we actually would have on the administrative section we had 2 floors. The call center was upstairs and the rest of the business was downstairs. On the offices of people, we would have stickers on their door that said, I started in the call center.
Oh, great.
And some of these people were VPs. So people got to see that.
Yep.
And, that really impacted people. And the other thing that we did is they knew that the customer wasn't always right, and they knew that we knew it, and they knew that they were actually our priority. If we had a rule that nobody gets to yell at anybody in our place, no boss gets to yell at anybody, and no customer gets to call and curse somebody out over the phone. And I don't care how angry it is, we'd kick them off.
Yep.
And when you do that for your employees, and they would call and apologize to me, the dentist would say, "I'm so sorry, I lost my temper and everything. I apologize, and I'll apologize to her too." And I said, "Yes, you will, and you're still off, right? But you're going to do that because you don't get to talk to my people that way."
Yeah.
And when you do that for your people, they go to the wall for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was, and that was sort of instinctual, just because I had crazy bosses along the way, and I had had shitty jobs along the way. And I said, we're never going to run our business this way.
Yeah.
And no customer is going to wag the dog, because we had, I was at jobs where the customers would be so abusive. It would just be amazing. It's the fact that I never raised a hand to somebody shows my capability of restraining myself, because there's some people that just needed a smack. But we were adamant about that atmosphere. And what happens, because you can't be vigilant about everything, what happens in a great culture is the employees protect the culture. Yep. They defend the culture at every turn. And that's, you don't have to be there anymore, because it's as important to them as getting paid.
Yeah.
And if somebody isn't in line with that, they'll tell them. They'll gang up on them. They'll say, "We don't do this here. What that thing you're doing, that's not here. You need to go somewhere else, or you need to cut this shit out."
Yeah, that's good. I mean, self-perpetuating culture, it continues to grow without the founders having to beat the drum all the time. That sounds, especially after 30 years, like you really developed and maintained a very, very good culture.
Yeah. And my last month I was there, because every month we would celebrate all the birthdays and all the work anniversaries. My last one that I did, we celebrated 3 25-year employees and a 10-year employee.
Wow.
All in the same month.
That's great.
And it was like, it was one of the proudest days of my life, because I thought, these people spent their entire adult life working at our company. It was so gratifying. And and they would talk about it, just like, "We can't wait to get to work on Monday."
Yeah.
That's when you hear that.
Yeah. That's huge. When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
Because what we did, both my partner and I, is about 7 years in, we took 2 years off. I took 2 years off, 3 years off, and he pretty much went part-time after that when I came back. But we were able to basically go and totally refresh ourselves, because I know some people, they never get a break. I have a good friend of mine. She's been running her business for 18 years without a break.
Wow.
And she's doing really well, but she's running herself into the ground. We basically, the business, you couldn't say autopilot, but without our adult supervision, the company just kept growing. And so we were making, $1 million a year a piece.
Yeah.
Without showing up.
Yeah.
That's when we knew we had succeeded, we would go there just to see people and take them to lunch and stuff. But we could kick back and let it grow. That was when we knew we had put all the right people and all the right systems in place. And then eventually I had to come back. Eventually you got to course correct a bunch of things. And one of the things we did is we had over promoted somebody and put him in charge, and he kind of went off the rails a little bit, and I had to go in there and say, "You know what, I need to come back and run the place again." And that was one of the lessons too, is even though we felt like we could kick back and not pay attention, we should have been paying attention.
Yep.
We should have still been, spend 3 hours a month going over the financials and the KPIs, and letting people know that there's we still got an eye on the place, and not let stuff veer off course. One of the great things that I had was my brother had come to work for us. And so we had somebody that we completely trusted in the business. And that was the point where he came to me and said, I think you need to take a look at what's going on here.
Yeah.
And so that's when I came back in and righted the ship and then took it to the next level.
What does success look like to you?
Success to me is when you're growing people, when your leadership is making people better at what they do so that they become leaders themselves. And when you get beyond stuff, when you've bought enough stuff to say, yeah, that stuff made me about 3% happier, then you start to look at, well, how can I have impact? And how can and those become the things when you move up the hierarchy to contribution. That's what real success looks like and feels like to me. I make way less money than I used to make. I'm happier, but I'm not happier because I've been relieved of running the business. I'm happier because I'm focusing on what I'm passionate about every day, which is coaching people to be better at their business. And I do plenty of coaching for nothing to people. And then some people pay me really well for an hour of my time. And I am passionate about helping to be bolder, people to be bolder, because we got big problems. We need people who are willing to just go crazy and step up and really try to make a difference in the world and make a dent in these problems. And when I get people to do that, when they click and they say, oh, wow, I'm getting the feedback loop now. I'm feeling what happens when you're bolder, that I'm stepping into that zone. And that's where all the good stuff is. That's gratifying to me. That's success for me.
Perfect question for you. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast growing business?
Be careful about throwing money at the marketing problem. It's one of the biggest risks that the businesses have, is if they raise a bunch of money and you don't solve the problems creatively, you solve them with cash, and you don't learn much from it. And a lot of times, our constraints, we started with $30,000 and we didn't raise any more money for 15 years. Because one, we couldn't, and two, we eventually developed great banking relationships. We had a personal bank, a small bank that they lent us way more money than they should have, because they understood our model so well that the bank managers just kept going into her lending committee and say, look at the history of these guys. She says, I know that they are never going to default on anything we lend them, because I understand how they run their business. And because of it, we just had this line that we could work with all the time, and it would allow us to experiment with certain types of media. And then of course, if stuff's a lot more trackable than it used to be. Understand those numbers and make sure you get people who know how to interpret those numbers, know what they actually mean, because you can get buried in data and come away thinking it's like, oh, we got millions of clicks. Well, how many sales?
Conversions,
and it's that's a very basic thing, but a lot of people they fall in love with oh, I'm the marketing department, I'm supposed to generate leads. well, you're not supposed to generate just the volume of shit leads. You're supposed to generate closable leads. And actually, I would like a lot less of them and a lot warmer ones.
Yeah.
and so it's that vigilance and knowing, we were very close. We bought all our own television. We placed it all ourselves. And other companies would come and say, we can buy it better than you. And we would let them try. And one company, just really big company, they thought they were brilliant at it. They gave it back in 6 months.
Wow.
Because we kept saying, you're never hitting our numbers. We know the numbers you can hit. And they gave up and they said, we don't know how you're doing it. It's because we know exactly what we're doing is why. And we had, just it were things like, we always had my media buyer. She always had a slush fund. So if they would call us and they'd say, so and so just dropped out of the Oprah Winfrey show at the last minute. Do you want it for half price?
Yeah.
Fuck yes. I want it.
Great bargain.
Yes, I'll back up the truck.
Yeah.
Right. And they knew that all they had to do was make one phone call to Karen.
Yeah.
And it was done. So they didn't make any other phone. They didn't call anybody else first. And so it would be stuff like that was where we were profitable. If we didn't buy our own media, we were only running at 15% profit margin. We would have run it 2 or 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was that constant vigilance and tweaking and tracking and data mining and adjusting and spending wisely that made us, profitable.
And you use Net Promoter Score. Do you remember what the last score was in those last few years?
No, but it was in the 60s, I think. Somewhere in the 60s.
That's terrific. That's amazing.
Yeah.
If you can number consistently. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else on funding your business? So started with $30,000 and then you got some private equity down the track. The bank was very helpful, which is rare. Anything else on funding?
Never bring in a partner for just money.
Yep.
Bring in bring in a partner that their value is they either know something about business that you don't. They're better at some things. They're older and wiser, or they come from a totally different vertical, which is really fabulous.
Yeah.
Because you really get tied up in the knowledge of your vertical, and then somebody comes along they'll come from manufacturing and they'll start to talk about their systems, and you'll say, yeah, well, we're a service business. And then they'll talk about 2 or 3, you'll tour one of their plants and you'll say, well, that's brilliant. We could do that, right? We could pull that system right into ours. They just ask different questions. So, and those kind of people bring more than money, and because money's easy to find if you learn how to communicate properly and actually have a valuable business. If you don't, you're going to have trouble finding the money, and they're going to be up your butt every minute wanting to know how they're doing, how that's doing. They'll leave you alone as long as you're growing, profitable, and they see that there's something at the end of the rainbow, a big thing at the end of the rainbow, or it's just barfing off dividends, on a steady basis. But the mistake I made was when I brought in money, I lost control.
Yep.
And that I would never do that. I had the choice between mezzanine financing, which would have given me the same amount of money as the private equity would have given me, but I would have maintained my role as CEO for as long as I wanted, and I would have never lost that SaaS business.
So why did you not go with mezzanine then?
Because the mezzanine had that internal rate of return,
right,
of 20%,
Yep.
which they do. They lock it in. And they said, whatever happens, we're making 20% on our money. Your loan payments are going to be smaller. They're going to be this. They're going to be 5, 6, 7%. But at the point of sale, there's a calculation that's made where they get 20% minimum.
Yes.
And so that, and it was almost a coin toss, but the problem was I really liked the private equity guys, and I thought they're gonna bring some value, and they actually did. They were really great, but we collectively picked the wrong CEO. I mean, he fooled us all.
Yeah.
I was an active participant in picking this guy, so I get nobody to blame because I didn't veto the guy and get overridden. I picked him too.
Yeah.
And so but the problem with them was, within a year, I just said, how long are you going to let them keep doing this? And I had no power to stop, for them to listen or have to listen to me. And at a certain point, I was like, you don't have to hit every guardrail. There's money straight up the middle.
Yeah.
And they would like, well, let's jink to the left, let's jink to the right, and let's try all this stuff. And meanwhile, in the lawsuit, he had vaporized all our free cash.
Yeah.
And we had lost the SaaS business.
Yeah.
So now we were limping along, trying to resuscitate our business that was suffering from being Googleized.
Yeah.
And so the choice of losing that control to the private equity guys is what took me down. And I should, I get to look back and in hindsight say, should have just borrowed the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because in the end, they would have, if I lost with the mezzanine guys. And I had learned the lesson before, because we had we were in a tight spot several years earlier, and this dentist lent us $1.5 million, and he had a pretty good note. His juice was pretty good, like 12% or something like that at the time.
Convertible note, or
yeah. And we thought this is we needed the money. It's not a great note, but in the end, 5 years goes by. All of a sudden, he is broke. He's in a tight spot, and he says, "Can I get my money back? I'll just take 6% interest if you just give me my money back." And of course, now we're flush.
Yeah.
And we cash out. So the lesson was there. We just didn't learn it.
Yeah.
There's like, borrow the money and work hard to pay it off.
Yep.
If you use it to grow, you don't use it as play money, or you're not stupid with it or extravagant with it and just throw giant parties or something dumb like that. then the debt. Yeah. I love debt.
Yeah. I'm helping 3 distilleries here in Australia capital raise at the moment, and those are the exact conversations we've been having to maintain control, leverage debt. I guess this question applies more to what you're doing now. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry, coaching and helping other people?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I would have I've brought my brother back in to the coaching team that I'm building. I would love to have 4 or 5 people that were really able to create deep value to businesses, go in a lot harder, because I'm a visionary, and I give fast answers to questions.
Yep.
My brother he was the COO. He's the guy that says, okay, if we're going to take the hill, we got to make sure we got enough gas, we got enough food, we got tires for the Jeeps, we got all that, right?
Yep.
And I'm the guy that thinks everything can get done in 2 weeks. And he's the guy that says, well, it's 3 months, right? And I go like, all right, fine. And so he comes in a very different way. He brings, and I love listening to him, because I'm always amazed at what he knows, because he'll come into the finest points about a sales pitch. He can train salespeople marvelously, which I would never have the patience to do. I'm a guy that I can't deliver the same pitch twice.
Yeah.
Right. I'm an ad guy. I'm a freestyler. Right. It's got to be different every time, or I'm bored. Right. He's saying, no, this is, I'm going to load your lips and say the words that work. And then salespeople would do it and say, wow, that really worked. And he said, yes, that's why I taught you that.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
There was a time where we were in, it gets a little complicated, so I'll try to summarize it. The guy that owned the phone number, the 800 phone number, we licensed it from him. We didn't buy it from him. So we were paying him on a regular basis, a lot of money eventually, to use that trademark. And he was always wanting more money because, again, he thought the idea is everything, right? And so he thought he should be making more money than us. And I said, we're paying you everything that we are contractually obligated to you. And he felt like there was more money to be had. So he kept hamstringing the business to squeeze more money out of us. And we eventually got in litigation as the internet was coming in. We're saying, look, we're getting strangled here. We need the domain name 1-800dentist.com as well. And we went to arbitration. An arbitrator said, yes, it's part of the trademark purchase is that domain. It's just because it emerged as a new marketing tool that wasn't contemplated when we started the contract. It's still yours. He still found a way to not give it to us. So we got in litigation again. And we tried to say, look, we got to develop another brand. And we invested a lot in a digital brand, in an online brand. And we were so tight on money because then the internet crashed. This was like 2001. And we had teed up this whole partnership that was going to be a digital partnership. And so we were in a tight spot. We had spent millions of dollars in media promotion that we couldn't pay. And I was trying to settle with the guy any way I could. I offered to pay him double what we were paying him. We were paying him $1.2 million a year in licensing. Jeez. And I offered to double it to just drop the case. And he turned me down.
What?
And he sent a one sentence letter that said, I think we're better off just going to litigation.
Oh, God.
And so my attorney, who was a good friend, and he was we had given him office space in our office. So we actually had like an in-house attorney, but he had his own law firm. And he said, don't settle this because you can't figure out how to pay me. He said, we'll figure out that later. Let's figure out how to win this now. And so he and I put our heads together. And this was the powerful lesson is never hand it over and say to the lawyer, go ahead and win it. Strategize with the lawyer. And I said, I can blame him for all of the media money that we spent on this other website that we developed, because we wouldn't have needed to spend that money. We could have just put our domain name in our own commercials.
Yep.
And my lawyer said, yeah, I can sell that. And we went into litigation on that. And we had 13 claims against him for, you stack up these things. The arbitrator awarded us all 13.
Wow.
Great. That my lawyer said, I've never won every claim in a case before. So the guy owed us $12 million at the end of it. That was what all our legal fee, all the penalties, all the interest, all the media costs. He had to give us the phone number.
Correct.
Because he didn't have 12 million bucks.
No.
So we went from making $1.2 million to nothing in an afternoon.
Because he was just greedy.
Because he was greedy.
Yeah.
And you can't fix greedy in people, and you can't fix self-destructive. That was it. Some people can't stop themselves from destroying their own good fortune, because he had it great. All he had to do was open an envelope every month. And I said, I'll switch places with you in a minute.
Yeah.
I take all the risk. I do all the work, and you sit there and complain about us not paying you enough. But it was, the lesson was strategize, never fold.
Yep.
Think. and just and go to bed, wake up the next day and start swinging again.
Yep. What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
In trying to become a better leader, I've had to learn to do that hardest thing, which is to take feedback, to get feedback, do a 360 with your team.
Yeah.
And there was stuff about my behavior that I was totally blind to, because that expression, I think Marshall Goldsmith is the author of the book, but the title is "What Got You Here Won't Get You There."
Yep.
And it's that basic concept. It's half the things that got us here keep us from getting to the next level. We don't know. We think it's everything that we did, right? But half of them are impairments. And I was totally blind to some of my behavior until the team just told me. Like I was the guy who would shoot the messenger.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And when they told me, I went like, seriously? And they looked at me like I was crazy. Like, how can you not know this about yourself?
Oh, yeah.
Right. And what I was is I would have an emotional reaction to anything somebody told me and then calmly solve it.
Yep.
But I was like, the first thing I did was kill the messenger.
Yep.
I would shoot the messenger and then proceed to deal with the issue. And they all knew it, so it didn't bother them. But they were, like, I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
But you just don't know it. And then, so you live long enough. It takes a lot of ego to start a business, and then it takes a lot of humility to grow the business long term.
That's a great line. I've never heard that, and I'm going to use it.
Good.
What have you?
I'm the ad guy. I make up lines in a moment.
Yeah. What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
I enjoyed all of it. As crazy as it got, it was thrilling to just walk in every day and go like, what are we going to do? How do we adjust to this? Who do we plug this new hole of team member that just got created that we had no idea we needed? We had a controller. We need a CFO. We can't just promote the controller.
No,
she's a controller. So let's find a real CFO. And then discovering those people. I mean, the most stressful thing in rapid growth is that recruitment process. Is somehow figuring out as skillfully as possible, who is that the person you should hire? Are they right? And know enough to pull the trigger. When 3 months in, you go, they're wrong.
Yep, that's it.
Get them out.
Having the fortitude to pull that trigger, but also I think a lot of small business owners go short on recruitment. They don't value it. They don't understand it. They're too busy, and they're just perpetuating massive problems for themselves, getting B and C players on the bus or assholes. Whereas if they invested the time early on to get really good at recruitment and refine that process and keep working on it over time, they're going to have a much more solid business and less stress.
I read something in the Harvard Review, an article about recruitment, and it was interviewing CEOs, and one of the conclusions was that great CEOs spend about 50% of their time recruiting.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's a huge number, but that's, they're not running anything. They're finding somebody to run it. And that's, I've had the good fortune to spend some time with Sir Richard Branson. And one of the things you notice about him and learn about him very quickly is he delegates, he grows people. He's got way too many businesses. He doesn't want to run any of them.
No.
So he got really early on, he got really good at finding those people that had that potential.
Yep.
He's got a lot of women running his companies. But that is the skill above all, is to really get good. Because it's a 50-50 shot most of the time at finding the right person. Because some people interview really well and that's it.
Yeah,
they got nothing, right? They're all show up front, and some people suck at interviewing, but they're they're dynamos.
Yep.
Um,
Which is where they
and
also need to be more bold.
yeah. And so if you can get yourself up to 70% success rate,
Yep.
enormous impact on the business.
I guess that answers what you love most about growing a small business. What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
I thought that I could just propel the business without paying close attention to the financials. And I was very comfortable running 3 initiatives at once rather than sequencing them.
Yep.
And what would happen is I would drain off a lot of the cash because I wasn't paying close enough attention to the one dog in the race that was slowing us down and either needed my attention more or needed me to pull the plug. I have fallen victim to the sunk cost trap more than once, and throwing good money after bad when you just have to say, look, I know we've spent $1.5 million on this, and throwing $500,000 more will only throw $500,000 more down the drain. Let's just take it square on the nose and stop.
Yep. What is the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Calmness. But I would say it's calmness and persistence. Never let someone use discouragement as motivation. When somebody else says, I mean, the number of people that said 800 dentists would never work it's laughable to us now. But we went, we'll show you.
Yep.
But to me, the number one thing that was my success is paying attention to the people and letting them know that I was trying to make them better. I wanted them to be better than me at what I was doing, whatever I was doing. And that's the humility lesson. The guys who would get trapped I can do this better than you, so I'm just going to do it. It's like, yeah, but there's only one you.
Yeah.
So if they may not be better, you gotta dip to rise.
Yeah.
You gotta slow down to speed up, and that just takes maturity to know that sometimes you have to do it. It's just like you were saying about recruiting. It's a pain in the ass to take that much time to recruit at the beginning because you think, I just need a body in this place,
warm body
somebody
syndrome.
to do this. It doesn't, as long as they got a pulse, put them in.
Yeah.
And and we hired so many of them. We hired way too many friends at the beginning, like everybody does, and they can transition very comfortably from you being a friend to you being the boss and behave completely. They have 2 different integrities, right? Boss behavior and friend behavior, and they just weren't. I would say, give them a job. They need a job. Is that a reason to hire somebody? Your friend needs a job? That's like the dumbest reason ever.
Yeah.
But I must have done it 40 times.
Yeah.
And 38 of them I was wrong.
Yeah. Jump over to growasmallbusiness.com and leave your details to get a short 2-minute email I send on Fridays to help small business owners like you become better leaders. I include some reading or professional development resources I've discovered in the last week. Well, that's the next question. How can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening? Apart from don't hire friends, any other advice?
Yeah, rule number 1 and 2. But it's don't try to do it yourself, and get really good at the questions that go into another layer of the person. But I love an interview where you're if there's two of you at least interviewing this person. So somebody's listening and watching their body language as you ask the questions.
Yep.
And I love asking, what was your biggest mistake you've made in your career?
Yep.
Because if they can be candid about that, it shows that they're self-reflective.
Yes. Yep.
And I'll never forget one guy who was coming in as a sales manager. And he said, and my brother was in the room, which was great because we both got to talk about it after. And he said, I said, so what's the biggest mistake you've made in your career? And he said, never made one.
See you later.
So yeah. So in my mind, my brother's mind, we're like, and the interview is over.
Yeah.
Right. And so we went along for the polite 15 more minutes. And then, but it was like, wow, how as a sales manager, did you think that was a good closing line? Yeah.
We've spoken a bit about culture, but you got anything else to add on building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Yeah, it's have your core values be really clear, whatever they are. They are individual for your business and individual for your personality as well. But don't have 40 of them. Have 5, 6 of them, and have them in it's not like innovate. That's not a core value. Okay, if I see one more company that says we innovate, that's our motto, it's like, really? No shit, you're actually going to try to do stuff better. What a brilliant idea. No, find a way to articulate it, one that it's unique to you, or clear and actionable, and measure. You can measure yourself against it. Do more with less. That's something you can ask. Somebody says, well, we should do this, and you can come back and say, does that do more with less? And they say, well, yes, it does, and this is why. Boom. That's a core value you can work with. Have 5 of those and make sure everybody knows what they are. That's how you build the culture. Because we had integrity trumps profits. That we knew that. And they could ask right off the bat. They say, it sounds like we're just trying to make money on this, and it's a little weak on the integrity side. And we sit there and go, yeah,
that's good.
So we're not doing it. We're not doing it.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
I think that there are periods of busting ass, and it's a 60, 70, 80-hour week. Like when I'm and then there's times where you stand down. You got to take care of yourself. You got to hit the refresh button. But it doesn't mean I can only work 7.3 hours a day and then I've got to have the whole weekend off. No, you got to have times where you refresh yourself. You got to actually reduce the cognitive load on yourself so you can think, which a lot of entrepreneurs don't. They just work. It's like there are times you got to have a day when you say, I've been doing, and now I'm done. And it may be done for 2 hours, but it's done. It's not done unless there's an email, right? It's done. And take that time off where you go for a week without thinking about the business. Now you're not going to be able to do that right at the beginning, but perfect example of, like, if I was shooting another batch of TV commercials, which we would do twice a year, that would be round the clock for 6 days.
Right.
And it would be a 14-hour shoot day with 2 hours of prep early on my part. And then I'd have to go to sleep and wake up and do it again the next day. Guess what? The next 3 days after that shoot, I didn't do anything. I let somebody start to edit. And then after 3 days, I'd walk into the edit room and I'd start to look at stuff. Because otherwise you're crisp. You're not, you burn yourself out. But balance isn't a daily thing. It's like, it's waves of it. But guys get addicted to overworking themselves, and they ruin their home life. They ruin their health. I know so many guys my age who have destroyed their health in their families, in their relationship with their kids to get rich.
Yep. Yep. It's very common.
Yeah. And it's a tragic mistake because the money ain't nothing.
That's right. Yep. Absolutely. I'm very big on that point. And especially after a few beers, do lecture some friends that I feel that they haven't got perspective on that. How much professional development have you invested in yourself over the years?
Hundreds of thousands. Still doing it. I'm spending probably $100,000 a year on coaching now for myself. Because I need, and that's what I got. That's what it costs me. Because I need somebody who can coach me.
Yeah.
Right. I can't I can't get some life coach for, $500 a month.
No.
What's he going to tell me? Eat right.
Yeah.
Don't sweat the small stuff. It's like, shut the hell up. Right. It's like, I need somebody who's going to hold my feet to the fire, who's going to listen and who's got the expertise to say, there's another way to look at this.
Yep.
Or this is what you're not looking at.
Yep.
This is where your personality is hurting you.
Yep.
Or hurting the situation. Or is that really how you should do things? My coach, the number one thing he did for me 3 years ago was to teach me to never undervalue myself.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I quadrupled the amount of money I get for coaching.
Yep.
Because of it.
Yeah.
So he's free. Is how I look at it. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. And have you had mentors along the way?
I have had every kind of mentor. I had somebody, two guys in the ad business. Sometimes a mentor is a guy who says, do this. And that's it. That's all you get from him. And I had that guy get me started in the ad business. And he just said, you need to go to this school for 6 months and learn to write advertising.
Yep.
And he said, and then you'll get a job. He said, I'm not giving you a job because you're not ready. I didn't want to hear that. I was like, just hire me and I'll figure it out, because that's who I think I am, right? I figure everything out if you just give me a desk, right? And so he said, no, you got to go learn. You got to get better.
Yep.
And to hear that early in my life was a gift. It's like, stop thinking that you can talk your way through everything. You need to refine yourself and get some real skill.
Yep.
And that skill, that 6 months in that school was the one thing that I can attribute my wealth to, because I learned how to communicate through advertising and then eventually books and lecturing and coaching, all of that communication skills that were refined in that time. And then other guys that mentored me for years, or other guys that I've been blessed to have. I had the chance to sit down with Tony Robbins for about 90 minutes, and one-on-one, and he just interrogated me about my entire career. And he was the one who said, and I said, I haven't really had a lot of mentors in my life. And he said, all right, let me list all the mentors that you mentioned along the way that you're not labeling as mentors. And yeah, I kind of did.
Wow.
Okay. It's stuff like that. When you find out there's ways to get better, and there's people that just say things to you, and there's books that there's some business books you read and you go, this means nothing to me, and you don't read it, and then 5 years later you read it and you go, this is brilliant. Right? Where was all this stuff the first time I read it? It's just you weren't ready.
And at 800 Dentists, did you have a board of directors or advisors?
We didn't, and that was one of the things we didn't do that well. Is we took our own counsel pretty much. We didn't have outside board members. But what I did personally was I sat on the board of other companies, and that was really great for me, because I would hear how they did things differently and much more successfully. And so I would be able to bring that into the business. So we had, with private equity, we had a board of directors, and there was one guy in particular that he was from a big venture fund, and brilliant guy and hardworking. I mean, he would come in and say, "Look, I know we're not having a board meeting," he says, "but can I just spend 2 days with the team talking to the VPs?" And we said, "By all means." Then he gives me a 20-page report on his insights. Now, this is a guy making $3-4 million a year.
Yep.
In his job, easily that. And this is the kind of diligence that he could come up with. I mean, there's people out there that are just really smart, really experienced, and can give you great insight. So if you can find them, never think that there isn't somebody that doesn't know something that could help you. It's and so often it's this whole concept of who, not how, is really powerful. Like, stop thinking of how to get stuff done and figure out who can help you get it done, who can do it for you, or who can teach you how to do it.
Before we get on to the final 5 questions, you're one of the few that we've had on that have exited a business. Excuse me, we talked a little bit about that. Any final advice on exiting a business for the audience? Don't fuck it up.
When an investment banker comes and says, "I can get you $70 million for your business," he's lying, okay, to get your business.
Yep.
And what he says he can get means nothing. Have a perspective on what the marketplace is doing and be realistic about what your business is.
Yep.
And don't try to squeeze the last bit of money out of it. And know that whatever the earnout is, even what the holdback is, that's bonus money.
Yes.
If the money you get the day on closing isn't enough to satisfy you, don't do the deal.
Yep.
Because that's all the money you're guaranteed to get.
Yeah. Good advice. All right, Fred, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
You don't think you have enough time to do everything, so you prioritize by what's urgent rather than what's important.
Great advice. Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
Wow.
Yeah, gotta pick one. It's hard.
I'm gonna say Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek.
Yep.
It's the book I give everyone.
Haven't read that one yet, but I'm a big fan of Simon's work, Knowing Your Why. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Me and the rest of the world are big Tim Ferriss fans.
Yeah, he's good.
And the rest of the time I'm reading. So there's so many good people. I mean, Simon Sinek, all 3 of his books are brilliant, but anything by Jim Collins or that Jim Collins is involved in, with Good to Great and Great by Choice. Those things are, when you understand those concepts, you're so much better off.
Yeah.
So, as much as I love Leaders Eat Last, that's a maturing thing as a leader. But to running a business, when you read Good to Great and Great by Choice, those things teach you fundamentals that will always be true in my mind in business.
Right. Yeah, agree. Phenomenal books, the Jim Collins. One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Bring a financial person in as early as possible. Somebody who really can keep track of the numbers, and also knows how to cultivate banking relationships. Isn't just a numbers cruncher and knows financials, but knows how to create a deep banking relationship. It can be done, and it has to be somebody willing to do that, and not just say, "Look, this is a big bank; they're very reputable." No, I want them to know us.
Yep. Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
It's all going to work out. Slow down and pay attention.
Yep. Great. Thanks very much for your time today, Fred. Really enjoyed the chat. It's been a lot of fun. I think it's the cast I've laughed in the most, and everything you've said I agree with, and it aligns with the way I think and operate in the businesses, and the little bit of coaching I do as well. I really enjoy. So really appreciate your time. Congratulations on your success.
Thanks, Troy. It's been a pleasure. It's always fun. Hopefully this is valuable to young entrepreneurs out there.
Definitely. Absolutely. That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.